Hello and welcome to another Healthy Bite. My name is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Now, before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I am recording this, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Well, this week is a big week because it is focused on mental health. Down in Melbourne and available online is an international summit on psychedelic therapies for mental illness. Now, this is being put on by Mind Medicine Australia, and I first came into contact with Mind Medicine Australia when I saw a rather compelling documentary, which I'd recommend you have a look at, called Trip of Compassion. It's an Israeli documentary which followed the MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorders. Now, the Trip of Compassion follows three particular cases, and they were really interesting cases. The first one was a first responder, an ambulance driver who was a first responder at a bomb blast, which was the scene of carnage and, of course, was incredibly traumatic. The second case that's followed in the film is one of a young woman who was traveling, I think, in South America and was kidnapped, felt her life was threatened, was held as kidnapped for about a week and then escaped. But the scars which that left her were quite profound. And the third case was one of a sexual abuse. So this covered quite a few areas which sadly many people have experienced, and it leaves them with a lifelong scar of post-traumatic stress. And so that was my introduction to Mind Medicine Australia, and I actually was at the time also president of the Australasian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine, and felt that there was a great synergy there between ACNEM, that college, and what Mind Medicine Australia was doing. And so this summit is on for these 2 days coming up now on the 19th and 20th of November. And so many of the resources from that summit will be available on the Mind Medicine site. So if you're listening to this after that event, well, this is about consciousness raising as well, about making you aware of what this is all about. So I thought I might share with you this short 2-minute, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's a YouTube clip, but if you're listening to that, it's equally compelling.
Did you know that over 45% of Australians will experience mental illness in their lifetime? That's nearly half of us.
I can't sleep. Everything feels flat and grey. I feel ashamed.
Mental ill health devastates lives and families and costs Australians around $60 billion a year. Research and treatment expenses continue to rise, yet rates of mental illness indicate that we're losing the battle. New approaches are urgently needed to address this immense suffering and cost. Psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy is currently being trialled worldwide and has demonstrated remarkable promise in treating depression, anxiety, addiction, and post-traumatic stress disorder, with new trials underway for treatment of dementia and anorexia. The treatment combines a short program of psychotherapy with just a few medicinal doses of psilocybin or MDMA. In the 1950s and 60s, psychedelic treatments had a major impact in psychiatry, and many considered it the next big thing in mental health treatment. But for political reasons, the Nixon administration criminalized the use of psychedelics and effectively stopped all research. That research has finally begun again. With proper clinical support, psychedelic treatments are safe and frequently lead to remission after only a short program, and even where current treatments have failed. Here at Mind Medicine Australia, we believe everyone should have access to the best treatments for mental illness. Subject to forthcoming clinical trial results, we will seek to establish best practice in regulated psychedelic-assisted treatment. Mind Medicine Australia is wholly focused on the clinical application of psychedelic medicines. We're preparing for change by developing therapist training, ethical guidelines, a centre of excellence in psychedelic medicine, educational material and events, and supporting clinical research. We're a small organisation doing big things, and we need your support. Please share this video and visit our website to support us and get involved.
Well, I was very happy to support that initiative and address cause. You may have heard a podcast a few weeks or months ago with Dr. Martin Whiteley, who wrote that rather confronting book, which if mental health is an issue, this is, for any of you or your families or friends, this is a book that is worth reading, particularly if you read it in its digital form, because the hyperlinks to the resources, there's over 60 pages of references and links to various things. So it's a beautifully written, very important book called Overprescribing Madness: What's Driving the Current Mental Health Problems in Australia. And I think Martin raised some very important issues here, and that is that the prescription of medication for protracted mental health issues it has some place, there's no question about that, but there are some really serious issues. And so this is a continuation of that theme to address causes. And it's interesting from that video or that short clip that you just heard about how politics plays into health. And I think this is a story that is very easy to miss but difficult to ignore once you become aware of it. And that is that sadly, in our health system, whether we're talking about chronic disease management, whether we're talking about mental health, physical health, whether we are talking even about the pandemic, I have identified, I think, 4 Ps that seem to drive our approach in many of our approaches to health in our system. And that is, profit is a big factor. Patents play a big role. Politics is huge. And somewhere along the line there, public health does come into it. But if you think that so much of what goes on in healthcare is purely and simply about public health, well, I think you're missing a very important point, which brings us back to the psychedelics and the fact that this was outlawed so many years ago, the war on drugs we've addressed in other podcasts, and like the war on poverty, the war on hunger. These kind of wars don't seem to really do what they set out to do. And the war on drugs in general has been an abject failure, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking to judges, police officers, heads of police departments, whether that's the Australian Federal Police or undercover police. And I've had patients of both departments I've had people of both departments as patients, and all of them have acknowledged that really this is it's window dressing what we're doing. We might be getting 5% of the imported drugs. So the war on drugs just simply isn't working, and it's filling our jails and our courts and taking up incredible resources in our society. And unfortunately, it's not really working, and nor will it ever work. So actually, I believe decriminalising and regulating what have been described as illegal drugs, be that cannabis, and we've done some program on medicinal cannabis and its uses. But here we're talking about psychedelics, MDMA, psilocybin mushrooms, or psilocybin drugs, which have a tremendous potential to address the causes of protracted mental health issues. And in this summit, which is on the 19th and 20th of November, but as I say, if you're listening to this afterwards, go to the Mind Medicine Australia site to look more into this. But it covers the neuroscience of these new treatments, the psychedelics, consciousness and belief changes from the nature of reality, therapeutic and ethical implications. It talks about the whole history. I think we have so much to learn from the past. And I've often said this in terms of nutrition. The nutritional lessons we have to learn from our journey as a species are things that should inform us if we're ever in doubt about what we should be eating. Well, these kind of rituals have been a part of life throughout the ages. We've had explorations. People have always been drawn to drugs through our human history for varying reasons, and one of those reasons are an altered state of consciousness, an ability to see more clearly what the problems are. And I thought it was very interesting when we did an initial podcast with Tanya de Jong, who is the CEO of Mind Medicine Australia. She said something that I thought was really profound, and that was, it seems that these kind of psychedelics have an effect on our default mode network, which is that part of our brain which connects memory, emotions, our regulatory parts of our brain. So it's a way of opening up the brain's ability to communicate with all of those different parts. The effect of these psychedelics is on the default mode network, which literally opens our minds. And whenever you've had a traumatic experience, and one of the things that defines post-traumatic stress disorder is this recurring nightmares which may occur related to the event which caused the trauma, or the events which caused the trauma. And this is about thoughts just going round and round in our heads without being properly processed and properly processed and stored and emotionally dealt with. And that is what happens when you have a traumatic experience. And that is one of the things which defines post-traumatic stress disorders. Now, interestingly, psychedelics work on the default mode network, which opens up pathways within the brain which allows you to process those problems, those conditions. And many people who have engaged in this therapy describe it as one of the 5 most amazing experiences of their lives in a positive sense. And I think when we're talking about mental health, very few people would reflect on how they are managing their mental health through medications, which interestingly, another thing that was said in one of our many podcasts is that these kind of antidepressants actually suppress the default mode network, dull our senses down. So this is a very different approach. This is about addressing and causes and resolving issues which can be long, protracted, frustrating, and go on for a lifetime. And as that video shared with you, mental health is a huge and growing problem in our society, and arguably the last 20 months of a pandemic and lockdowns and social isolation have exacerbated many of those issues. So I would encourage you to visit the Mind Medicine Australia site. If you're listening to this and you're wanting to attend a conference online with some amazing speakers, really world leaders in this field, the International Summit on Psychedelic Therapies for Mental Illness is going on in Australia online as we speak. So get on board and have a listen to that, or visit the Mind Medicine site to explore this subject further. I'm hoping to be interviewing many of, or some of, the speakers on this program over the next few weeks and months. So we'll be expanding this theme, but I just wanted to alert your attention to it and share that resource with you. I hope this finds you well. Until next time, this is Dr. Ron Ehrlich.
This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health, and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express their own opinions, experiences, and conclusions.